Now, Ursula should close this out. I'm an older sister, so I already know the chain of command. Whew, give it up for the poets who have. Damn. Feels like these are my people, though. Good lineup. This lineup, yo, is ridiculous. Okay. I'm reading some poems you probably haven't heard before. This one is called, because I was thinking about the theme. I was like, I want to be on theme for Joss today. I want to make sure I'm in the pocket, you know? So this is called Poem in the Field. And it has a news story incorporated into it. On August 26, 2015, Vester Lee Flanagan II, a black man, shot and killed 2 fellow journalists during a live television interview in Virginia. He recorded the shooting on his phone and later uploaded the video to Twitter and Facebook. Flanagan died by his own hand following a 5-hour police hunt. The incident has been called America's first social media murder. In a Huffington Post story, Flanagan's former news station co-workers reported that on one occasion, they, quote, meant to tease him for a story he did on a spelling bee that made it sound as if the winner would get a case of Girl Scouts rather than cookies sold by the group. Somebody had a Girl Scout emblem on their desk and made some copies of it and taped them to his computer. If he had only laughed, we would have all been friends forever. But he didn't laugh. He got mad. Poem caught playing the field of inquiry, of discourse, of inference, of vision. Poem in a field of poppies, vespers, rye, battles, conquests. Poem in a field of endeavors. Poem in a field of editors. Poem in a field of action. Poem in a field of play. Girl Scouts, grammarians, syntax. Poem in a field of formatting, cookies, data, in a field of errors. Poem in a field of fish out of water. Poem in a field of minds. Poem in a field of finites, axioms. Poem in a field of white wits. Poem in a field of white laughter. Poem in a field of corn, dreams. Poem in a field of antecedents. Poem in a field of transgressions. Poem in a field of little forgiveness. Poem at work in the field of killing, in a field of cane, range. Poem in a field of rage. Poem in a field of staccato, in a field of bodies. Poem in a field of cotton, hands and words. Poem in a field of black faux pas, black English. Poem in a field of punks, philanderers, potters. The field of my black head, field of reason. Poem in a national domain. So this one I was working on last night because I was telling somebody this story about how I was involved in this project and how when I was in college, I wanted to be a journalist when I graduated. And I went to a conference and I met this stranger on the street who handed me a packet of information that I still have to this day. And I haven't really known what to do with it, but I keep thinking about it for the last almost 30 years now. So it's called The Ballot of George Smith. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a journalist. I got a summer internship at a Black journalist conference, and I was assigned to write stories on a daily basis for the conference news platform. I was terrible at following assignments. And one day I wandered outside the convention center in Chicago in search of real people. I met this slick, loquacious kid named Chico and asked if I could hear his story. And as I was finishing up my interview, this older gentleman, uncle age, came up to me hurriedly and handed me a thick stack of papers, Kinko's printed, held together by a binder. He told me that I had to do something with them, and then he rushed off. The papers were copies of letters he had received from the government, attorney generals, members of Congress, in response to his requests for help through handwritten timelines, typewritten police reports. The letters were stamped and sealed and marked with ostentatious and timid signatures. Mr. George Smith came into the Office of Professional Standards and gave the following interview in essence, but not verbatim. 2 white male plainclothes police officers arrested George as he protested against George Bush's actions in Haiti, and he was thrown in jail, later bonded out. Then he filed a lawsuit against them. We have concluded that your complaint does not involve a prosecutable violation of federal civil rights statutes. We regret that we are unable to assist you. George's wife was assaulted by another patient while in the hospital for the amputation of her hand. After examining the circumstances of your case, I regret to inform you that I am unable to offer assistance at the present time. A compilation of offenses, a collection of insults without response or acknowledgement from 1994 to 1997, almost the length of my college education. Please excuse our delay in responding. When I met George as a young writer who wanted to be a journalist, who wanted to tell people stories, to change the world, to help out, at first I felt chosen to tell his story. At first I was scared and thrilled, regarded the pages as dangerous, thinking they were directing my future. The papers have haunted me like clothes left behind by dead folks, some Pan-Africanist Da Vinci Code. I felt chosen and yet duped and conned by George, who could have been insane. At first, I didn't wonder enough how he might have come to be so. George, a man who believes in a paper trail, who believes in the writing on the wall, who believes in the letter to the editor, like my mother, who believes in the notion of customer service, another word for basic decency. Their generation believes in seeking the right of way, even in the face of evil. The grace is always due. The dignified deed is a reckoning, and the world ain't shit. The world does them wrong, and us, their children, too. George said, I will write to my congresspeople, and I will record badge numbers and social security numbers and birth dates. I will note every detail in order to make things right, to make them say they were wrong, to admit their wrongness and intent to wrong, to be sorry in their bones. George's pen is mighty and steadfast, his litany of losses an American elegy. Every few years I remember his stack of papers among my papers. One year I looked up one of the cops' names. I looked up articles related to George's plight, George H.W. Bush's grim legacy in Haiti, how George H.W. Bush made Guantanamo a prison, starting with Haitians. I think about President George and Haitian George, my great-grandfather George, who served in World War I, their accidents of birth, the name they all carry that means farmer, earth worker. Every few years I wonder, did he do it for his soul or theirs? Did he get the justice he was seeking? But I already know the answer. I've been writing this poem for a long time. Every few years, I remember that George thought I was somebody who could help tell his story. He gave me a ticking time bomb, or a secret treasure trove of classified secrets, or a stolen Bible of conspiracy theories unraveled, or the raving mad archive of a man who has found his way of resisting, or a memo of American understanding. Please excuse my delay in responding. So this is a poem I wrote that was published in 1998. It was published as an article, but everything I wrote that was an article, this is why I'm not a journalist, everything I wrote as an article was a poem. And so editors would just fuck my shit up, okay? And then I was like, this ain't for me, because leave my stuff alone. I'm the editor. But so this was published, though, in a publication called Real News. Does anybody remember Real News? Yo, this was like the first thing that, like, first opportunity I had to be published for my prose outside of school, like undergrad classes. I wish I could remember. I couldn't find in my papers last night the name of the person who edited it. But if anybody knows, please share with everybody. But it was a Philadelphia independent news publication that would publish young writers like myself, and we would just be writing about whatever. And it was like a real newspaper. But this is also the narrative behind a trailer for the Love Johns mixtape that I produced in 2019. All right, all right. Some of the Love Johns people is up in here. Still online, you can still find that. It's called, and this is why I brought it, it's called The Real Poets Press. I am a poet, and I am sitting on the R5 regional rail train to North Wales to grease my fingertips with my mama's fried chicken and potato salad. And by the way, I am reading the poetry of the 60s, Nikki, Sonia, Etheridge, Amiri. I'm trying to piece together all the friend and love affairs that may have gone on between all these poets. There are parts missing, but I'm content with what I know, that just like nowadays, poets then were bound to befriend one another, bound to swim in schools, and bound to fall in love. I imagine that us poets of the millennium will someday write the bios of the poets of the 90s. And then our big-headed kids will someday write the bios of our generation's poets. And everyone will discover the secret that poets love each other sometimes. Frederick Douglass called poets picture makers, said their ability to make pictures was the secret of their power. Sonia Sanchez said the poet is the creator of social values. And Audre Lorde wrote that poetry was a way of distilling experience, that it forms the quality of light within which we predicate our hopes and dreams towards survival and change, first made into language, then into idea, then into more tangible action. To witness the poet's sunlight of truth is an act of courage and love on the part of the reader and you, dear listener. This is not about whipping up a poem for the movement like a grilled cheese sandwich, or sending a first draft of my rage to your latest issue. This is about a profound respect for the utterance and how it comes into being. This is about planting myself in the ocean of our existence like some ancient, absorbent, gathering coral reef, being honest every time I step to the page and the stage about what I've seen, what I'm seeing, what I can see. We need poems like lighthouses and hilltop fires showing the way, and often the poems we need to write for ourselves are the poems that others need to hear. You want to say that we got a renaissance here, that we got a rebirth of creativity, a resurgence of poetry going on. The Harlem Renaissance, the beats, the Black arts movement been long gone, but the magic of them is still here. What will it take for our children's children to say the same about us? It will be the poem on the page, in the ether, the poem amongst the music, the art itself, not the fantasy, the mirage, the mystique of what being a poet is perceived to be. I'm a poet, and sometimes sitting down to write the word be hard, be ugly, be painful, be so real that I may beg myself to stop. But the real poets press on. The real poets press on.